I'm Rachel. I'm here today with April, and this time we're going to be talking to you about what does it look like to plan for this journey of home education, whether it's yearly, maybe in the middle of the year, maybe it's weekly. How do you do that? How do you plan to get things done? How do you do that, April?
Well, that's a big topic.
It is huge.
The first thing I would say is you pray about it. And
Amen.
that may sound cliche, but you really do need to pray about what do you want to accomplish this year and set goals while also knowing they're not going to always be accomplished. So you pray about your desires first, and then what I do is research a bunch of different curriculums, mainly because it gets me motivated and inspired. When I see like all the fun new stuff out there, I get encouraged by, hey, that looks cool, knowing full well I'm not going to do most of it, but it gives me ideas. And some people like to have a full course from like one company. I'm going to get like everything from them, and some people like to cobble it together. I kind of do cobbling together.
Me too.
I piecemeal, like I want this, I want this, I want this. And so packaging it together, and I get very excited about the new curriculum and like the brand new, not to mention that in a week they're going to be like ripped off covers and stuff.
I know, it's
Try
true.
to ignore that part. But I do like to do a big brainstorming session. So
is this like in
this
like
would be
August?
like the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Yes. And sometimes I'll do it actually at the end of last year because I might buy some things throughout the summer. So it just depends, either at the end of the past year or August when I start school. That being said, we actually kind of do year-roundish school because we miss days here and there throughout the year. And I've also noticed that the kids will forget if they go too long. I've never taken a full summer off because we will miss probably a day or two throughout the week all the time, and then during the summer it's a little bit lighter, but it's almost the same stuff. And that helps us not have to have a refresher, because if I do that, they will forget like what's a fraction, what's a decimal, I don't know, and so then you're like starting from scratch. So we kind of do all year round, but the summer is kind of summer. So I will do my planning during that time. So you research the curriculum, and then you write down all the cool things that you would like to have, and then realize that you're not going to have 80% of it. So you mix it, and then you take the things that you can do. So I will order the new stuff, and then, so at the beginning of the school year, I like to buy all new little pouches, with their pencils and the crowns. It's
and you
so
sharpen them all. I know.
So exciting.
Because that time of year, everything's possible.
Everything's
Everything's possible.
The erasers don't have any marks
the
on
crayons are whole.
Yes.
At least for a week, maybe.
It's a fun feeling.
It is.
And you feel legit, like
do.
we are a real school, because we have
the chalkboard's clean.
But after that first week and a couple of weeks, rub off, there's still a lot of exciting stuff, because then you're finding out which curriculum actually is working for you or not. So within, I'd say, the first month or two, so let's say September is our official start time with our new stuff. Even though I'm schooling all year round, we try to finish in the same time frame as a regular school, so we would try to be done roughly by May. That's our goal, and then start new in September. And so by the end of October, I pretty much have an idea of what things are not working and what things are. And so I can be making a list. And if I can't buy a new curriculum right then, I'm at least noting it. Like, I don't really like this one. And so that's the time where you can start tweaking. Even though you may not be able to replace it yet, you're just taking note that I won't do this again next year.
Because you don't want to torture your children.
No. Or yourself.
Well, I learned that the hard way. When we first pulled Charles out to bring him home, and I felt like my first order of business was to teach the child to read, which was terrifying.
That's tough.
It's tough. I was dyslexic. I was taught to read, not the phonics way, but the whole language. I had no idea what I was doing. So I got this curriculum, and I discovered, like you're suggesting, a couple of weeks in that this was not working. And what was my clue? We were both crying.
Yes,
and
that's your first clue.
I don't think that tears have to accompany phonics. I think that there's a disconnect here. But I pushed. Because I was like, no, we've got to do this.
Got to finish,
But again, I'm hoping that we can set some people free. If it's not working, it's probably not working. And you can set it aside. So go ahead.
Time to reevaluate. So I don't have it on a schedule. I don't have like, okay, today is my reevaluate day.
No.
It's just every now and then.
Sure.
You step back and maybe even flip through the things and see what the kids have been working on and say, okay, I just don't know if this is working. It's either not fun, it's lost the excitement, or it's too difficult or too complicated even for me.
Yeah.
Because when I see, when I flip open and I see all the scope and sequence, if it's way too like wordy and detailed and you have to constantly be like, going back and forth, I get kind of sleepy.
Yeah.
I want to take a nap. When I see like really thick textbooks, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like, so I just want to go lay down.
Yeah.
And so I want something that keeps me excited. And every parent is different, which we've talked about before. I like being able to do my own thing. I like the freedom. And so I love being able to pull off a book of the shelf and be like, we're going to study this today.
We're going to do this.
And because I'm excited about it, they get excited about it. And I have seen that time and time again. When I bring out a topic that I am like really passionate about, they get so excited and we learn together. So it may veer off from the actual curriculum, but they are guaranteed learning something.
Yeah.
And they are remembering it because they catch that passion.
The enthusiasm.
Because if the teacher's excited, the kid's going to get excited. So,
and I just want to pause right there for just a second. I think it's really important for us as homeschool moms to take full advantage of the opportunity of not allowing our children or not, if our children get to a point in our homeschool journey where they're hating a curriculum, I think we really need to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Now, that was something I didn't allow the kids to do.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to hate spelling. Yeah. It's spelling. That's just
too
visceral. It doesn't deserve that, But to sort of step back and unpack that, because hate is like love.
Yeah.
It has energy behind it.
It's very strong.
It's very strong. It's not without its consequence, right? Yeah. And so if your kids start down there, kind of arrest that early and assess that. Right. And it's probably either they're not ready for it, so they don't understand it, they can't get their head around it. It's usually something other than spelling, right? Yes. There's something else going on there. But don't let that fester.
Right.
That's just an aside, but I think it's kind of an important thing.
Yeah. Something needs to change. It might be you, it might be your kids, or it might be the curriculum.
Yeah.
And maybe a combination of all three.
Right.
But either an attitude needs adjustment, or this thing is not working for us.
Exactly.
We can pick it up again next year.
Right.
So there have been times when I have tried and tried, let's say with reading, because that is so easy for some people and so hard for other people.
Yeah.
And it is okay. It is totally okay. And so when I see a kid that's struggling with reading, I gauge by the effort and their heart that's being put into it, not by how much they're actually accomplishing.
No.
And so I may pull back and say, handwriting's another one.
Oh, yeah.
That's huge. I might pull back and say, all right, we're going to do that later. And in fact, last year I bought a handwriting curriculum for my kid who was 5 at the time. He could not save his life to just it was so sloppy and messy, and I had to like hold his hand. And I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to do this at all this year. I put it off. Yeah. This year, he's perfect. See? He has the most beautiful little handwriting. He can do his little A's, and he has learned the right format. Whereas last year it was just all over the map.
Well, and he was frustrated.
Exactly. And I was like, this is so painful. So just don't do it. Put it off. You can pick it up again later. So when you're doing your overall planning, take into account that you're going to be changing some things up.
Yeah.
And so you write your big plan, and then after I do that, so I'll do my researching in my curriculum.
Yeah.
Then I will write a book list of what I want to read out loud with all the kids.
And that's my favorite part.
I love
that part,
I love reading, and we have a great library of just tons of little homeschool books that we've collected over the years. Great chapter books. And so I'll just write down everything. I may not get to all of them, and I may be doing a lot more that I didn't have on the list as time goes on, but I at least have a rough idea. So I'd say my planning is more like a skeleton outline. It's not like super detailed, but it's just, okay, this is what I really want to do.
Yeah.
After I do that, I will write down a list of what I want each kid individually to read.
Yeah.
So my older ones who are reading independently, I will let them go into the homeschool room, which is kind of like our library, and let them choose, let's say 10 books or 20 books or whatever they want, and I will approve the books. It's not going to be like, Hardy Boys for a 16-year-old, which he doesn't choose, but he's choosing like super thick. He's reading Bonhoeffer right now.
Oh, wow, that's a great book.
I love that book, and he's also reading all the David McCullough books. He and Oakley both are working through the whole set of those. So they will select a lot of books that they want to read, and I will say, yes, that's a good one, that's a good one, and then I will categorize it into subjects. Yeah. So in South Carolina, it's different. You're in North Carolina. The regulations for homeschooling, you have to actually send in our state what you're going to be doing.
Right.
And so if you wanted to do, let's say, a history curriculum that is not buying a set,
Right.
like buying from a company. Then I called them and said, I want to create my own history list. And so they just call it teacher created curriculum, something like that. And so I have to label it. Some states don't have to do that, but I do that. And then I list all the history books. So when the kids pick out what books they want, I put them into categories.
Yeah.
And so I'll have a teacher created Bible curriculum, teacher created history, whatever. And so I plug in those books. And then we have our goals.
Yeah.
Throughout the year, they may add more. And typically we do, because they read pretty fast, the older ones. And so it's like, okay, hey, you finished that? Well, that was easy. We're going to add some more, So, but it's just a rough idea. And then I'll do a list for what the middle boys are going to read.
Yep.
And then for the younger ones, they don't have a reading list because they're not reading yet. But I'll just have a list of picture books for them that I want to go through, and that they usually pick out their favorites. They love the James Harriet.
Of course. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And I'm really happy they do, because those words are sometimes hard. It's long stories. They sit enraptured for those, and so I'm very pleased that they.
I always say that if you're going to do a read aloud, it should be above where your children are.
Yeah.
But when you're reading with them, it should be on their level.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're encouraged here and challenged here. So it's both ends.
Yeah.
It really does help.
Yeah.
So did you have a day? I mean, you're talking about the big picture, like in August, maybe September. But
like
then
did you?
Yeah, did you have like a planning day intermittently maybe, or how did you do that on an ongoing basis?
I'd say like during the summer I probably did several different days. It wasn't like all like, some people do a planning retreat where they go away for like 3 days.
I've never done that.
That'd be awesome.
It sounds glorious. Yeah.
I love that, but I haven't got around to that yet. So I do, throughout the summer, I'll just work on it, probably like
in between
week.
milking cows.
In between milking the cows, I'll like bring out my notebook. And then throughout the year, I don't have a set time, but I just kind of evaluate every now and then. And probably like January, it's like end of semester, so I will start again and say, okay, we need to get a little bit more curriculum. I'm always excited about more curriculum, because more is better, even though it's not.
I love books.
I know.
It's so hard.
And because each curriculum has its strengths and weaknesses, and so you really can pick and choose and pull from a lot. So I have a lot of unfinished curriculum, but I learned a lot throughout the time with the kids, and then I picked up in another one. So I just have bits and pieces of a lot of things. And so I'll just kind of reevaluate throughout the year. And like, for example, I used a really great, well-known teaching reading for teaching reading last year. And I'm not going to say what it was because I didn't love it, but it had great reviews. And I ended up going back to my little Abeka readers that I used when I was a kid, because I had a bunch of those.
There you go.
It was just simple. And I'm not saying that's the best one out there. I'm just saying that's what I ended up using because it was something that I was familiar with, because I could remember like reading when I was 6 years old. And I was just like, this one over here is a little too complicated because I can't understand what they're trying to, teach at this day. And so just be willing to change it up and be willing to nix some things that aren't working, and that's okay. That's part of the journey.
Yeah.
So what was your like annual?
Yeah, so like you, I loved conference season.
Yes.
Because I loved conference
It's
fairs,
inspiring.
and I love to walk around and touch and
Smell the books.
Yes. I just loved that. I love to get all the used books with the library smell, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that time of year, and everything was possible. This was going to be the year we were going to finish the curriculum. This was going to be the year that we're going to figure out fractions. This is going to be the year that we all know how to spell, because I'm a terrible speller. So how are my kids ever going to do that? So it was just glorious. And I am more of a planner than you. Yeah. And we're just different. And so I would always get a fresh planner every year.
Yeah.
Yes. And I would just like hug my planner. I had, this whole thing going on with my planner, and I would diligently fill in the boxes, what we were going to do every month and where we were going to go. And like you, make the whole book list and everything. And then as a gift, because I'm not just a planner, but I married a planner. Yeah. So, which I think works out really well. Yeah. I think if you're going to be one, you need to marry one, because otherwise you're just going to drive each other crazy. So he would give me every Sunday night I got to plan.
Okay. Which
was really glorious, because it was really the only 2 or 3 hours a week that I was alone at my house, which I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm the only person on the planet, but as a homeschool mother, I really liked being alone at my house. I did. I really liked that. And he would take them to Awana, and they would be gone for about 3 hours. Okay. And I would do really boring stuff like load the dishwasher correctly or do a load of laundry, right? And I would just sort of sit there and take in the quiet moment. And then I would start looking, what did we do last week? And sometimes the list of things that we didn't do was longer than the list of things we did. And so I would take some time and look at, I would look back at last week's plan. And I was like, how am I going to carry forward what we need to carry forward? How am I going to mark off what we don't need to carry forward? Like you were saying earlier, sometimes you just need to move on.
Yeah.
You're just not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I got in the habit of, as I looked at the last week's plan, I would go in and I would circle everything we didn't do.
Okay.
And again, just to be clear, there were some times I should have just circled the whole page because nothing got done.
Nothing happened.
And, it's just sort of like I need to scribble out the date and just put the new date in, right? Because that's just how it was. Because sometimes you have a bad day, sometimes you have a bad week, and sometimes you have a bad month, and sometimes you have years that are just like, oh my goodness, we're supposed to be on lesson 121 and we're on lesson 19.
Right.
How did that happen? It's just the realities of life. We went through unemployment for 22 months once upon a time with 7 children as a homeschooling family. That was a lot to take in and figure out how are we going to do this and get your head around the emotion and the bills and the unemployment issue. I mean, it was just a lot, but to just persevere and forge ahead through that was a huge thing for us. So I would go in and I would circle everything. And then I would literally, to what you said earlier, I would just pray. Yeah. Okay, so of these circles, Lord, what do I need to circle back to? Yeah. And what do I just need to step away from?
Go. Yeah.
So then I would literally mark off the circles that I was just going to step away from. Yeah. And sometimes it was stuff that I really wanted to do, but we didn't really need to do. Right. There were other things that we needed to do. Something else was coming up or whatever. And then there was always circles that we needed to roll forward. Right. And so I would prioritize those the next week, right? And then I would, make the plan. Now, this is a tip that I loved that I hope maybe helps somebody out. We did a lot of reading together. Reading time was a thing. It was about 2.5 or 3 hours every day I was reading aloud. Now that doesn't mean straight time. Right. That means with like cheese and grapes and crackers and lots of potty breaks and sibling rivalry and Legos and a lot of, but total time was about 2.5 or 3 hours. But I would have a stack of books that I was reading. Science, history, literature, Bible, right? And so when I did my plan for the week, I would get a Post-it and I would put Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and I would write what I was supposed to read every day on the Post-it. Okay. For a couple of reasons. One, too blonde to remember, right? I didn't want to have to take my lesson plan book into reading time.
Right, to carry it around. It's hefty.
So I couldn't remember it. I didn't want to take it in. But I got such joy
of checking off.
It off. And I knew myself. I knew. And so that's
it's
huge.
Motivating.
It's motivating. Yeah. And it's really important as a homeschool mom to know yourself. Yeah. What are things that you need?
What's going to help you feel encouraged?
Exactly. Yeah. It was so bad at one point when we were in the having a lot of kids phase that I would write on my list of things to do to nurse the baby. Yeah.
Just so you could check it off.
I could check it off.
That's something you know you're going to get to.
It's going to get done. So I would have my stack of books. And I would put them in the order of priority too. So Bible was always first. And you said you're doing something in church history, but that's fascinating. And so that was always on the top. And then the other ones would rotate. So if today I'm going to get Bible done and we're going to get literature done, but man, something came up, we didn't get history and we didn't get science.
You at least got the most important.
Well, I'd rotate them back, right? Okay, so now, tomorrow it's going to be Bible, still it's going to be first. But literature's going to go to the bottom, and then the other two are going to progress up.
That makes sense.
So that was a way to rotate through without always never getting science done.
Right.
Because true confession, my husband and I own a science company, and it was really easy for me to never do science because I'm not a science girl, right? Yeah. And so it was a way for me to discipline myself and actually do it. Yeah. So again, every week I would do that. Like you, I had individual planning pages for the kids, especially as they got older. Yeah. And, we had 7, you have 9. Some of mine were motivated. Right. When they were in the 3rd grade, they're like, I got it. Yeah. And they were planning their week. Mom, if you'll just help me create my plan page, I'll fill it in. Good to go. Wow. Yeah. Everybody needs at least 1 or 2 of those, right? And that was great. And then I had others that were more dependent for longer, and then I had to sort of wean them in junior high and high school. But that's kind of how we rolled. Yeah. And like you, usually January we would reevaluate.
Yes, that's kind of how we do too.
Take something to our local resale room to bless somebody else because this is not working. Yes. Yeah, and it was just really helpful. Yeah. And it was helpful for the kids too. Yeah. And I can say sitting where I am, you've already got Jackson, your oldest, who is just born old. He's just a wise old soul. But, now I can see my kids, even the ones that were resistant to that planning, I can see them doing it now.
The benefits of it, yes.
The benefits.
Yeah.
And I would say it's important to teach them how to manage their time.
Right.
It's one of the things that colleges, if that's what your kids do or what they choose to do or what you plan for them to do, one of the things that colleges say, because we've had a lot of experience with this, the two things that colleges say set homeschool students apart is they know how to manage their time and they know how to talk to their professors.
Oh, that's big.
And so those are two fundamental things you're teaching them in the homeschool setting when they're little.
Right.
How to talk to you respectfully, how to talk to other adults respectfully.
Hang out with other grown-ups.
And manage their time.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good for your kids to see you plan. I think it's good for them to have a plan, a rhythm.
Yes.
To practice marking things off. We had I can remember our youngest two boys were just like this with planning.
Yeah.
Every year dutifully in high school I would buy them a planner and they were just like, and
I reuse the same one next year because
I wish I could, yeah. And I mean, when they got to college, they both independently sent me pictures of their planners. They're like, Mom, I got a blessing for you. Sent me a picture of their plan for the week, and it
so
comes
they appreciate
back.
it now. Yes.
So even if they don't, some are going to catch on, some aren't.
Yeah.
But sooner or later, this is a skill they're going to need.
It's helpful for them. Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
And one thing that has helped me is being able to structure it in a way that you can change things up. Like I do block courses sometimes.
Yeah.
Because what you were saying about switching it to the top of the stack made me think about that. Right now, we paused math because they're working on memorizing their times tables, my three middle boys in their class. So I paused that so they can just be memorizing that on their own. And I am doing all science right now. So we're doing astronomy with Apologia. And because we paused something else, they're like 3/4 of the way through their science book, and it's only end of October. I feel like so successful.
It's great.
I'm like,
we're
like legitimate homeschoolers. But it's because we're able to focus a little bit more on that. And so I can be done with astronomy then and move back to math.
Exactly.
And you don't even have to do that. You can do the same thing every day, if you want to, but you have that freedom to just switch it around. And sometimes I feel like they enjoy that block course because they're like immersed in it, and then they can be done with it and move on to the next thing. And it keeps it kind of moving. I don't know. So we do that. And then what do you do about like chore time? Like, do you have a chore schedule? We did. And again, sometimes this was more for me than for my children. Yeah.
Sometimes it just helped me to see that we were aiming at a target.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But we did. I set out I made charts and we had stickers and markers, and some of the kids just took to it like a fish to water.
Did you keep it like an annual thing? Like we'll switch it up at the end of the year, or it's just a daily?
We did fall and then we did spring.
Okay.
Because there were things that needed to be done in the fall that we didn't need done in the spring or the winter or whatever. And we did them in like the kitchen.
Okay.
It's where theirs were primarily, and then they had them in their bathroom.
Okay.
And so it worked really well for some and not as much for others.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's that old thing about when you have a target, at least you're aiming at something.
Right. Yeah.
And so you're more likely to get in the vicinity. And so it's a good reference to go back to.
Yes. Yeah.
And I did want to circle back to what you said about North Carolina versus South Carolina and the whole portfolio thing that you have to do there. We didn't have to do that in North Carolina, for which I'm grateful, and it does vary from state to state, so you do have to be familiar with your state law. But I always felt like my lesson plan book and all of their individual pages was sort of like insurance.
Yeah.
If somebody showed up, if somebody called on us, or even relatives, I thought, you know what?
We're
doing
prove
something.
Yeah.
We're doing something.
Look what we've learned.
Yeah, and I thought there was something to be said for something to show for it.
Yes.
And I confess, we're 2 years out from graduating our youngest, and I've only recently parted with some of the boxes of accomplishment that we did, just because I thought I need somebody to know that we did something.
Yes,
All of those years we did something.
It's a good feeling.
It is, and I think it's important
Yeah.
to maintain that.
Yeah, I think the same thing. We've saved a lot of random, like almost all their textbooks. I just save the textbook and put it into a box because I don't even tear out their pages because then they'll get lost. So I just like save the whole book and then just leave them in there. And then I have a separate one for their special art papers and their projects and all that. But I think it is helpful for our own sake and for other people who are like, what are you doing during the day? You know, like, what are you accomplishing? It's nice to look back and to feel like, hey, we have accomplished some stuff. But besides all the academic stuff, look where we've grown down in our relationships. Look what we've done. And so when you're doing your yearly planning, even to set up a plan for what you want to accomplish in your family.
Yes.
Like let's say you're moving, let's say
Yes.
you're getting a new job. All of these, you can kind of step back and see the big picture when you're doing your yearly and even middle of the year planning. So you can plug in big events that you know are coming, and you can plan for big events that you don't know are coming. So it's almost like a macro view of what's going to happen this year that we know.
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
What's going to surprise us, and how can we be ready for it? So even like switching when a new baby comes.
Yeah.
Okay, step back. We're going to pause. We're going to do baby time. For a
Yeah.
couple of months while mom gets some sleep.
Exactly.
School might be like Thomas the Train for the 2-year-old for a little while.
I remember that exhaustion.
It's okay. It's like a week or two.
It's true.
And then you get right back into your schedule. So there's freedom and there's flexibility, and it's nice to have a plan, and then it's nice to have open hands to say, okay, here's what we hope, and then God, what are you going to do, with this school year?
And He's always going to do something amazing.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us as we talked about what it looks like to plan. It's going to be up to you and God to get this done, and it's going to be a glorious journey.